17 weird Minecraft storage systems. Storing items in Minecraft is a sliding scale of complexity. So if a chest is the most obvious option, then we're covering the exact total opposite, the methods that are just strange enough to work. And hey, Mr. YouTube the Enderman thinks that you can't subscribe to the channel before he places this redstone block. So to prove him wrong, trigger that red sub button down below. It's free, and I promise you it won't cause an explosion. Number 1. Relocating a lot of items in Minecraft is kind of a hassle. I mean, you take everything out of your chest, you put it into your inventory, and now you gotta run over to your new base. That's sure to be a couple of trips, so it's fortunate that we've got the help of donkeys or mules to help us get through this. And while I'm sure that plenty of you are well and aware of the feature of throwing a chest on the back of one of these animals, I'm sure a lot of you don't really use them either. Because, except for this one use case, they don't really come up that much. Look, the best you're getting out of this is just this much storage, which really isn't that much, and it can't be upgraded. Is it functional? Sure. It's definitely weird, but I'm not exactly gonna say it's practical. And every time I use this, it just gets me wishing that I could pack more things in my pack mule. Number 2. While donkeys and mules are somewhat limited as to what they get to carry, there actually is a better contender for mobile storage, and that of course has to be llamas. But the key difference here is that llamas' storage is based off different strength values. Now see folks, the amount of storage that you get out of a llama is very dependent on a different strength value, going from 1 to 5. Meaning if you're willing to find that 0.8% of wild llamas that are strength 5, you're able to get 15 slots of storage. You see, if you chain together 9 different llamas into one caravan with a lead, then all of a sudden you got 135 inventory slots coming behind you. Granted, to get this going, you are going to have to breed a lot of strength 5 llamas. It's just the price you pay for such a posse. Number 3. Now, when you first look at them, minecart chests aren't that weird. I mean, it's a minecart and it's in a chest. It seems like it lives up to the name. But where the storage really gets strange is when you stack a whole bunch of minecart chests into the same block. As it goes, since these things are actually entities instead of blocks, you can stack up a whole bunch of them on top of one hopper. Meaning if you've got a way to put items in and retrieve them out, then you've got one of the most compact mass storage systems in the game. For my money, I can say this is a pretty nifty way to store all the items that you get from a farm. And it definitely looks a lot nicer than those huge storage silos you have to build. Just make sure your computer can handle all the new entities getting loaded in. It can get laggy real fast. Number 4. Before barrels were added into the game, you were pretty limited on how you got to do your storage. That is, unless you wanted to get creative with it. Because sure enough, chests aren't the only containers in the game, and if we look at it, you can actually use dispensers as a way to store your items. Now I know, it's not ideal. They definitely don't have a lot of storage. But I'll fully admit that in times where I didn't have wood, I've definitely put together some cobblestone and redstone to make some droppers or dispensers to store my items. But possibly the best use that I've seen of this is making a dispenser or dropper floor, because it basically looks like cobblestone, and then storing your item in between the floorboards. That way, unless your visitors are extra vigilant, they're not going to be checking out your diamonds. Number 5. Throwing items on the floor is a pretty shoddy way of storing them. I mean, after all, they are going to despawn in 5 minutes, and I don't think anyone wants that to happen to their netherite pickaxe. That is, unless you build a system like this. The way that this works is that we have one junk item getting pushed onto a pressure plate, and then the other one that we have being demonstrated out front, which means that as soon as the dirt despawns, the pressure plate gets untriggered, and then the diamond is able to be sucked back in. That way, the valuable item that we're showcasing never actually despawns, it just keeps getting cycled through hoppers and droppers. Honestly, I don't know why you'd use this over an item frame, but sure enough, if you want to show off your item in a trophy case, this is a pretty bougie way of doing it. Number 6. Now, we've talked about hiring different mobs into the workforce to carry your items around, but what if you need someone to work the graveyard shift? Well, in that case, a zombie works perfectly. Now see, depending on your regional difficulty, zombies can spawn with an up to 55% chance to pick up items, which means that if you throw enough things at them, they're actually able to pick them up just alright. And what's interesting here is that they can hold any item. So if you really want to max out efficiency, you can give these guys shulkers full of items to hold. If you really wanted to, you can automate a zombie storage system if you hooked up a zombie farm right into the storage area. It's definitely the strangest workforce I've ever heard of, but hey, at least since they're dead, they're not going to cause you any OSHA violations. Number 7. If you would rather sort through your items manually instead of having the help of a hopper, then this is definitely the method for you. You see, the way this sort of item shower works is that the droppers shoot out all of their items onto the floor, and then you, as the player, go in and then sort through what you want. Don't worry about leaving any mess on the floor. It's all gonna get sorted out in a second. Because as soon as you got all the items you need, you can then press this button, and all of the floor scraps will get sent right back into the funnel in the system. Personally, this takes me right back to the golden days of Hunger Games, where right after you kill someone, you gotta sort through their old inventory as fast as you can. And believe me, using one of these in your survival world is just as stressful and terrible of a concept as it is there. Number 8. As great as wolves are in Minecraft, they're not too good at playing fetch. Rather, for that kind of game, I'd much rather choose the foxes over them. You see, using this adorable mob, you're able to give them any item you want and they'll hold it in their mouth. And weirder still is that some of them they can actually use, whether that's a diamond sword to do damage, a totem of undying to revive, or even a chorus fruit to teleport. And fortunately, you don't have to kill them like a zombie to get the item back. Instead, all you need to do is just throw out a food item and they will always prefer that over any non-food item they have in their mouth. Proving sure enough that man's best friend might have some steep competition coming up. Number 9. Most of the time in Minecraft, hoppers are the journey and not so much the destination. But if we want to flip that whole concept on his head, we can actually use hoppers in a sort of carousel motion to then get our items circling around. By doing this, we can make our own form of item rotation circus to always keep your favorites in the loop. But what's important to know is that if you do build this, you should only have one item per hopper. That way you can prevent any kind of buildup in your system. Because hey, who wants a traffic jam anyway? And while doing this arguably makes hoppers even less valuable for storage, it is nice to know that sometimes you don't have to worry about where you're going and just enjoy the ride. Number 10. If you're really looking to take your items for a spin, then there's really nothing that matches up to a honey block roundabout. The way it works is that items are dispensed in the back and then pushed around on the honey blocks in circles by the pistons. While it really just amounts to a pretty show, I've got no problems with that. It is kind of mesmerizing to watch. And it's worth noting for the sake of being thorough that even if all the items don't get collected at the front, then they still get picked up in the back and then funneled into the system. That little tidbit isn't going to make it any more practical, but it is worth noting because, hey, at least it's functional. So if you got a rumbly in your tumbly for all kinds of weird storage, then this is definitely the best you'll find in the entire 100-acre wood. Number 11. Minecraft has plenty of different blocks that function as containers, in which that you're able to place an item inside of them and then they'll keep that item inside. Things like chests, barrels, dispensers, hoppers, any of that. And while I would initially think that furnaces are the most limited, that all gets thrown out the window when you factor in brewing stands. These things cannot do a lot. They got one inventory slot and it's only for potion ingredients. So if you're a practicing witcher warlock who wants to hide their golden carrots in a place that no one will ever find, there you go. But for the rest of us regular people, I think it's probably best to use brewing stands for, well, brewing. They're much better sorted for that job. Number 12. While Amazon might be the leader at shipping things across the globe, they don't yet offer interdimensional storage. So, until they do, you can corner the market by using nether portals to store your items. The way this works is that you send your items into the other dimension, they're unloaded, and then they're waiting to be called back. To its credit, this game can store any kind of item, but your Achilles heel is that the items are loaded for 15 seconds every time that a new item is stored. So if you do the math, then after about 20 item storages, you will have loaded the nether enough for items to start to despawn. So sure, it's not perfect, and it definitely has a lot of kinks, but hey, if you're not going to the nether anytime soon, this is a pretty good way to store all your items in that dimension, not even worry about it. Number 13. Now, this might be one of the most unique forms of item storage, because in fact, we're not actually storing items, but rather we convert them into items on request. So for example, we hook this up to a farm where if you want sugarcane, you then press a button and then it delivers sugarcane to you. Or you would have TNT blow up different stone blocks and the like to then deliver those to you as well. As you can see, the key difference here between other storage is that the items actually didn't exist until we pressed the button to call for them. And of course, the limitation that would come with this system is that you couldn't use it for all items. But if you want your sugarcane freshly harvested at a moment's notice, then there's really nothing that can top this. Number 14. Much in the same way as storing items in the nether, we can actually do that over here in the overworld. The concept is fairly simple. All you gotta do is take all the items you want to store, go over to unloaded chunks, and then throw them out on the floor. As long as no one lives or travels anywhere nearby that area, your items are still gonna be there when you return. And what's great about that is that you can leave for any amount of time, whether it's a minute, a week, or even a year. As long as those chunks aren't loaded, you're able to grab those items right off the floor when you left them. Personally, I would be terrified about doing this on a multiplayer server where I don't know where people are going and when, but if you're in single player, this is a somewhat decent method to get your items stored and restored whenever you want. Number 15. Getting villagers to do your dirty work is one of the classic pastimes of Minecraft. Turns out they can store quite a few items up their sleeves. You see, because of the way the villagers share food with one another, they actually have to have some form of inventory. And that means that we're able to store all of these items with a villager. But that is somewhat misleading because only the bread, carrots, potatoes, and beetroots can be retrieved from the villager. But say you want to get those items out of those big old sleeves and transferred back to you, then all you gotta do is expose your storage villager to a regular villager. And then, as soon as they want to trade, you would then intercept the items and then get them funneled down into a storage. And while this would seem like stealing, they did take some of your items and wouldn't give them back, so I think it's fair trade. Number 16. Having a fully stocked storage system in Minecraft is a huge flex, but what if you want to flex even harder than that? You see, if you're willing to cough up $26.95 into Mojang's pockets, then you can buy yourself a second account. And at that point, it's entirely possible to use that second account as a form of storage. Much in the same way as a zombie, you can throw them different items and then they'll keep it in their inventory. And then when you want your stuff back, you can just kill them and pick up the scraps. Thankfully for the price tag, the possibilities with this one could get pretty intense. Now, I don't know any rational person who would do this, but hey, if you're Elon Musk and you got a couple dollars to spare, this might be the easiest way of doing your chest system. Number 17. In most of our worlds, item frames just function as a decoration. I mean, they're even labeled as such, even Mojang agrees. But that's selling them kind of short, because if we actually use these as storage, they do function as such. The way that you would have this works by having a dispenser shoot out an arrow at the item that you want to retrieve, and then have it funnel back to you. Or if you want to be a little more precise about it, then you could just use your own bow and arrow to shoot it off the wall. To me, this reminds me of those old corny carnival games that we used to play. And personally, I like being able to shoot my tools off the wall at a moment's notice. The only problem is it's not that fun of a system to set back up. But that's just how life goes. It's way more fun to destroy than it is to clean up. And with that, folks, store that rare red sub button below and have a good one, alright?